Hi Arjun, what's up?
Hi. So did you enjoy I think now last 2 weekends, it's been pretty lot of interesting
I actually
results.
thought that this Premier League season per se is really exciting, and I really hoped, and I kind of I don't know if this is Pep's strategy. We're again talking about Pep to start off with. We promised each other we won't, but
How
he's
could
not.
you not?
Yeah, how can you not? He's not bought new players, and he's said literally that travel happened. It's not going to happen again. So that's a very strange mindset for a coach of his caliber to begin a season with, or maybe just trying to make people take it easy. And De Bruyne is injured, Mahrez is gone, Bernardo was supposed to go, and I don't think he really played a really crackling game. The last time around, they pulled off that slender thing with and Haaland missing a penalty. I mean, I wouldn't really blame Haaland too much because it was a decent penalty, hit the post, it's okay. But yeah, City is not the thing. My larger question, and I've been following them for 2 consecutive weeks, and even as we speak, the fact that they've always tiebreaker. Fulham has defeated Spurs. Right, Spurs was the most exciting team to watch. Fulham held them to a 1-1. They've held Spurs to a 2. Arsenal to a 2-2. They've defeated Everton. That's not no big shit. I think everybody's going to defeat Everton. But what's up with Fulham, man? I mean, how and what happened? What is this team?
I think why don't we look at Fulham's results the last.
I mean, they drew with Arsenal, right? So
they drew with Arsenal.
Yeah, Jimenez seems to have. His head seems to have healed.
They beat Everton the first day.
Right.
They lost to Brentford 3-0.
Yeah, it's strange.
The second week.
Right?
Then they went on to.
And that's at home.
They drew 2-2 to Arsenal.
Insane.
And now they've beaten Spurs. So I think what's interesting to see here is the nature of. I mean, you can look at the results, but let's look at the two bad ones. Like for example, let's look at the 3-0 loss to Wolves.
Right.
I feel.
3-0 loss to Brentford.
To Brentford. Because I think in that game, again I feel like Marco Silva Spanish. So he's very attack minded in general, just like most Spanish coaches are. But of course, when you're coaching a team like Fulham, you don't have that kind of freedom to play exactly the way you wish, of course, because of budget restrictions and the kind of players that you can get at your disposal at any given point, things like that.
Though, I mean, of course.
But Brentford, like they have been doing for years now, and they've been doing for years against the top teams in the Premier League. They know they have an answer to beating these guys, and because again, it's just the way they play, the way they set up, extremely organized in defense, superb on the counter attack, and their set pieces are second to no one.
Right.
And that helps them a lot. In fact, if set pieces could help a team get control of games, Brentford is an example, because it's not just about the set pieces, but it's the way they set up for after the set piece situation, where they can actually retain control of the ball for a little while before it just turns over. And they do that really well, and I feel in that sense Fulham really got exposed against Brentford. But
it's an interesting thing that you're talking about, so I would like to just interrupt you and ask you a question, because you mentioned a few things which caught my fancy, and try and plug them together and see if there's a pattern emerging. You mentioned limited budget. Which essentially implies when you have limited budget that you try and protect yourself as much as you can, right? Which is hence your defense has to be robust, and hence they have like really top-notch defense, and they have Rico Henry going on the counter attack and all of that. And the set piece strength, which is when you take when you have the ball now at your disposal. Now you can play your game, so-called, and that's the only shot you'll get. Because if the more expensive team gets possession, which is like in the case of Arsenal, they will dictate, they will retain possession. I presume I think Arsenal's game, Arsenal had most of the possession, right? Yeah. But they kind of squeaked in those goals. Now, let's talk about Fulham, of course. Brentford, of course, I mean, drew with Crystal Palace, was probably a similar kind of team. Defeated, Fulham, and of course, yes, in the absence of Tony, with Buemo, leading the charge, visas coming in and whatever. The question that I'm trying to ask is, if the lack of budget, and hence using the route then, which seems to be predictable, which is good at set pieces, keep your back strong and go on counter attacks. Is this something that other teams have also emulated now, or are you seeing them emulate? Do you see them emulating? Is that a way to take off a strong team by surprise? Maybe something what Sheffield United tried to do with City. Yeah. 9 people in the box.
So I think there are a couple of things to consider here. One is that, of course, being organized against the top teams helps, but I think number one is to understand Marco Silva's situation in a club like Fulham. So let's look at that first.
Sure.
Now, like we mentioned, he is an attack-minded coach, and it's not always necessary that the expensive teams play the better football or play more attacking football, and I think that has a lot to do with the mindset of a club in general, and whether or not and how they run. So let's look at Brighton, City. We talk about these clubs all the time, and how the fact that they're well-run clubs, and that fact actually helps the way they perform on the field. In Fulham's case, I feel Marco Silva and managers always, when they take a job, they're kind of in a fight to imprint their philosophy. So it's like any job. When you walk in, you have to prove yourself. You have to build a certain level of confidence with the hierarchy there, to prove to them that what you are saying works, your philosophy works. And until that point, there will always be a certain halfway point where they will have to meet. It will never be completely the manager's way or completely the club's way, because even in a way managers kind of put certain things into their contracts to make sure they have some say over transfers and things like that.
Also perhaps a decent exit.
Yeah, and I think Fulham, like we mentioned, Marco Silva is new. It's not been a long time that he's been here. He is an attack-minded coach, and right now he's in that phase where he needs to build that trust amongst the hierarchy. And once, and hopefully if they see that what his philosophy is working, if we just take the Brentford game, they have done well. The attacking philosophy kind of works. It bears fruits. And hopefully the club then says, okay, you know what, we can start backing this manager the way he wants. And now we're not talking about spending more money, we're talking about giving him more control over transfers. So he can identify players who are more his mold, and that can kind of fit his system better than the ones that he possibly has right now. So that way he can start going scouting in Spain, South America, wherever he wants, however he pleases. And like I said, we've spoken about Mitoma, we've spoken about NC, so these are players who have come for 2 million and prices like that. So it's not always necessary that you need to have an expensive player, but at least you need to have that say where you can pick and choose.
I think Andres Pereira in the case of Fulham, and now that they're not, I presume, not going to play Mitrovic, and they've still gotten Willian.
Fair enough. And these are players I would say kind of do suit his mold in a way, because Mitrovic is very technical and very good at his hold-up play. He's intelligent. Willian, of course, we've been seeing him for years. Very, very good technically, very intelligent again. Very good at moving teams around, moving with the ball. So these are players who I'm sure would like, but but he's still in a stage and where he's trying to build that reputation up for himself also, and ultimately a good manager will always stick by the way he wants to play. If you lose, you would rather lose the way you want to play than lose a way that you don't want to play, right? So I think that's, so in that sense and I think the second point which you mentioned was about setting up defensively, correct? Right. So I think that's a very interesting thing to or an interesting point to talk about, because I feel over the last 20 years we know how football has kind of changed and adapted itself in many ways. It's evolved. It's kind of, so I think if we look at the era where Spain dominated the world internationally speaking,
Right.
when they won 2 Euros and a World Cup back to back, and there was no answer to stopping that tiki-taka, free-flowing football, and nobody knew what to do. Right? So, and I think, and Mourinho was the first one who actually came and built up I wouldn't say first one. The Italians have kind of been playing a very organized defensive game for many years. But again, like, as one side of the spectrum evolves, the other side of the spectrum has to evolve. And the two spectrum I'm talking about is chaos and structure. Some coaches tend towards the chaotic side of football, and some coaches tend towards the structural side. And as the chaotic side evolves, the structural side has to evolve to match that.
Also, to put it another way, the only way to take on flair is with disruption.
Fair enough, but what I'm kind of getting at is post that Spain domination era, we saw France do very well.
Right.
And I think
Germany do very well.
We saw Germany do very well. But the essence of a French team is their defense and their counter attacks. But apart from that, we saw a lot of upcoming teams, Scandinavian teams. We saw the Croatians, we saw Denmark, we saw Switzerland playing extremely well. And I think if you really put all this together, what you realize is that ultimately, over the last 20 years, there's nothing called a good team and a bad team.
Right.
I think 20 years back and before that, you could say, this team is good and this team is bad. This team is going to really outplay this team and this team will win. That sometimes miracles would happen. But I think now you don't have good teams and bad teams. You have good attacking teams and good defensive teams.
Okay.
Because if you really look at it, what does it take to defend? Discipline.
Right.
It takes organization, it takes discipline. It doesn't require flair, it doesn't require any special ability. All it requires is for you to follow a certain set of rules, principles, structures set by your coaches.
Not very good for television.
Not very good, but that is what coaches like Mourinho, they feed on that. Because that's what creates let's look at a situation where there are no scores in football.
Right.
That the fact that there is a score involved is something that a lot of people feed on, at the end of the day, and it can be, and you can kind of look at it in many different ways and approach that situation in many different ways. So you can say, I don't need to have the ball, but ultimately it's not that. It's you need to be smart and pragmatic in a certain sense. So when you don't have the technical ability, you stay organized. Which is why today people say the Premier League is one of the toughest leagues in the world. Anything can happen on any week, anybody can beat, because there is nothing called a good team and a bad team anymore. You have good attacking teams and you have good defensive teams, and that is basically how football has changed. So today, the ones who are don't have a lot of flair and a lot of technique and a lot of, they will set up in a way where their strengths are absolutely to come out. They have to have that pragmatism and say, we need to do what we are good at, and that is just being disciplined.
Got it.
So, and I think that would answer your kind of little question about how people.
I mean, as you rightly said, so when you expect a West Ham and a Brighton to match up, Brighton, which is rampage, Mitoma's fantastic goal and playing so well. And then fucking West Ham at home to Brighton, Thompson 3 goals, right? And De Zerbi obviously doesn't seem to have an answer. So and this is not even Europe hasn't even begun.
Fair.
So does their defense look a little,
No, not at all. I don't think so. I would go as far as to say that. Brighton were very unlucky that game. They were, because they hit the post a couple of times. They had a lot of chances to score. So at this point, you can either I don't think the problem was with their defense. The problem was with their attack.
Okay.
So it was because they were not able to clinically put away certain situations that kept, and that fact kept putting them under more pressure as they kind of grew into the game. And teams like West Ham, and I wouldn't say West Ham, I would say a David Moyes team, feeds on exactly your opponent not being able to capitalize on situations.
Right.
And as a team, you see that okay, you keep missing chances and you keep kind of, you're not clinical enough. The other team keeps growing into the game. They get a little more confident. Their hope levels rise a little. Their effort levels as a result will rise because now they feel like they have a chance. I feel like if Brighton had scored one of those chances before West Ham, the game would have been very different. But these are margins that we always kind of talk about in football. So I don't think the problem was with their defense, because Brighton don't play in a way where they ever have to defend. Let's just put it that way. Unless there would be certain teams who would make them defend. But most of them, I think, let's not get into particulars, but most of them
has
will not.
More penalty area touches than a lot of attacking.
Exactly. So I think so that way their defense, like I think we touched upon a little bit even in our last chat, was defense starts from the attack.
Right.
Correct. So it's not ultimately, if a defender is made a mistake, it's always a chain reaction that has ended up on. That chain reaction has started somewhere else. The mistake has actually happened somewhere else. So it's like, I don't know if you remember, when you talk about tackles, I think this is very interesting because
I want to talk about mistakes in attack leading for another team.
But fair enough, but this, what I'm about to say, might be interesting also towards that, because I don't know if you remember Maldini.
Right. Of course.
Legend of the game, right? Italian defender. One thing that he always said has always stuck by me. Something that I keep remembering every time I watch football or every time I'm analyzing situations. He said, if you have to make a tackle, you've already made a mistake. You should never have to make a tackle in a football match. A tackle is a last-ditch situation. It's what you have to do when you've already made the mistakes. Football is about, when you're playing the right way, it's about interceptions. It's about forcing an error.
Got it.
It's not about tackling. If you have, and he said this again, I'll repeat it. If you have to tackle, you've already made a mistake. That's why you are having to tackle.
It's a cover up,
Correct. So, I don't buy this whole, even with United, me again, I'm a United fan, and people talk about Casemiro being very good with tackles. And I'm just like, isn't that a funny way to think about it? You have a player in your team because he's good at tackling. So what are you encouraging mistakes so he has to tackle the ball? In fact, Luke Shaw once in an interview came out and said, and I thought he was trying to be funny, but he came out and said, we joke with Casemiro saying that, he only gives the ball away so he can win it back. Is that something you say? These kind of things show the mentality of the players and what Ten Hag is having to deal with on an everyday situation, right? And it stems from that little Maldini quote, and then you can kind of put these things into perspective and kind of understand what is actually going on. But either let's
brilliant. The fact that you're using a Maldini quote to actually analyze the mood in the current Man United dressing room, sure is like.
I thought it was super interesting, and anyway, so the point is, Brighton, I think that day, and West Ham, of course, they are can't take away from their efforts. I think it's very unfair very unfair to say that they were completely unlucky. Yes, they were of course very, very robust. I saw that game and I think they were defensively very, very good, very, very organized, and at the same time they were not, I wouldn't say they were over devastating on the counters. There were certain counter attacking moments that they had and they managed to capitalize on it. I think Bowen's goal was absolutely world class. The touch and the finish was, and I think we spoke about Bowen playing centre forward last time, and I think this is interesting because we saw what he's capable of, right? And I think Antonio was brilliant. And
Antonio's form has always been a thing, right? He starts up brilliant and suddenly just fades.
Correct. And it's interesting to look at how they spent the Declan Rice money also. They've kind of gotten in Ward-Prowse. I think he's been a very, very calming set piece, but he's also very a calming presence on the ball. That's something I've appreciated about Ward-Prowse. Generally you will see that people who are very good at set pieces, they're also very technical players. I think that's why they're good at set pieces and things, because it starts with their technique and the way they train, the way they. But Ward-Prowse he's a calming presence in that midfield, and I think that's something that West Ham have been lacking for a while. Declan Rice was a great player, but he doesn't give you the same kind of calm that someone like a Ward-Prowse would. But I think now West Ham have just gone out and signed Mohamed Kudus.
Yes.
Man, this guy,
phenomenal player.
He could be one of the best for years to come, and he's a player I know for a fact that many clubs have been chasing for a while, and I'm a little surprised that he's decided.
I wonder why United didn't try.
United, there have been a lot of talks about Ten Hag actually wanting Kudus, but United's problems are different. Let's not get into.
Got it,
I mean, of course, we will get into it at some point, but it's things. There are a lot of things that need to be sorted out before we can get players like Kudus in, because even then, there's no point getting a player like Kudus in if you can't play a style that suits all these guys. And I think we'll talk about United's game against Nottingham, where we'll probably touch more upon United's game.
When you mentioned this thing about defense being attack being the first line of defense, I immediately thought of a name which I think a lot of Arsenal fans have been baying for his blood. I don't know, very diverse opinions about Havertz and what he's been doing. I mean, I don't know if you saw the game. I thought he was. I mean, what was going on, man?
I think he's a little. He's just a little lost right now. He's not a bad player.
No, of course not.
He's not. I think Havertz is a very technically gifted footballer. He's capable of doing amazing things on a pitch. But I think let's look at where he's been over the last few years. Arsenal is very, very different. The way you approach the game is very different compared to how he's been playing before in his Chelsea days or in his Bayer Leverkusen days. But I think we might have spoken a little bit about Grealish and how he took a little time to adapt.
That's right. It took a season. I mean, for everybody it's Pep second year.
But you can do things, you can manage situations and players like that once you are into a certain stage of your evolution. Once you build. Pep may not have had the freedom to bench a player like Grealish during his earlier days.
Right.
But once you already have a solid base, you can say, okay, you know what, we have players, and then you start managing, which is managing the situation like that. You start bringing in players a year earlier because you already have players right now, and then you start thinking about how to move things around, change things around. Ferguson was brilliant at that, in terms of his team building and man management. He knew what was the right time to. When a person had to go, when a person had to come in, how much time should be given to who, and how you kind of deal with young players coming through. You can't overburden them, overpressurize them, and he was kind of good with that. And I think Havertz is a little bit struggling right now with exactly this, because he's fallen into a very, very new system and a very, very, I wouldn't say more complex, but a more technical system compared to what he was used to under, let's say, Thomas Tuchel or back in Germany, or even with the German national team. So the German national team, again, they are German football was great for a long time, but right now, and it still is, but it's different from what Guardiola or an Arteta would want, and I think it will take a little while for him to just adapt to that level of decision making.
Yes, what is lacking.
Which is, I think,
what we saw in the Arsenal game is Odegaard is at his best, and Martinelli and Saka, and you just felt that. I mean, Trossard was, I think, incredible, because perhaps
Trossard plays on the left. I think generally he comes on the wing, and your job on the left hand side is way more cut out. I think there aren't too many complexities to your decision making system over there. It's like there in certain phases there are only certain things you should be doing and you can do. And but in Havertz is playing behind the striker. He's playing kind of as a second striker behind the striker, number 10 kind of a situation. Maybe falling down to the left and right side once in a while. He's trying to play a very.
Playing behind?
He's playing. I mean, they've kind of set up Nketiah. Right?
It's I think didn't start, no?
Nketiah didn't start that game, but see, right now they're experimenting again with different. Maybe he tried playing Havertz in a false nine kind of a situation, which is again a very complex role. Like a false nine, anyone in the middle, like they say, the spine of a team. The spine of a team is a goalkeeper, your centre back, centre midfielder, centre forward, and your number 10. These guys are in the middle. No? These are the ones linking things up. These are you're not just linking left and right. You're linking behind and forward also. So you're thinking in many more directions.
Sure.
So I think wherever Havertz is playing right now, he's playing down the middle, whether it's ahead or whether it's behind.
Yes.
So I think it's kind of
it'll take time for his decision making to kind of,
and it'll take time for his decision making to kind of get better, but it'll also take others a little time to kind of accommodate him, maybe build up that little understanding.
Last season, who was playing his role? Was it Martinelli who was doing it at times? Odegaard was, Saka still is on the right.
No, Martinelli is predominantly a winger. So I think he's always played down the left hand side because he's strong with his right foot. So he generally likes to take people on and get inside and kind of curl it in. Or when he does that, you'll always have Zinchenko or someone making an overlapping run. So they kind of, so that's how their system works, and it's before I think it was Odegaard who was mainly kind of doing this creative stuff in the final third. But now what has happened is that, but Odegaard is a very versatile player, so you can kind of switch him around, and he can even play deeper in one of the two midfielders kind of a situation. He can go out to the left, he can go out to the right. He's very versatile, So but I just don't think Havertz is that versatile. Like Havertz is actually very good in the middle. But like I said, in this system, it's going to take him a little time to adapt. So I think Arteta would now possibly have to make that decision and say, you know what, should I go back to what was working for me?
Right. Exactly.
And give him some time to adapt. Or should I give him time to adapt, but that might cost me certain results in the process, but once he gets better. But I don't think Arsenal are in a position to do that after last season because they got so close. They have a lot of pressure, a lot of expectations, not just from outside but from themselves. They'll have a lot of kind of.
And they have Europe, and I mean they are playing United now.
Yeah.
So that will be a game too.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Both the teams have been like leaking goals.
Yeah, exactly.
And for very different reasons, but yes, they've both been kind of leaking goals. So I think it will be very interesting to.
As a United fan, you have a prediction?
Watch that game. I think this game we will win.
Okay.
Because I think last time was a very disappointing result against Tottenham. But I think it was also disappointing the fact that we conceded those two very early goals.
That's right.
And we conceded them in a man, you can't concede goals like that. Like that's a glitch. Like it's an absolute glitch. Like it's literally those two goals should have never gone in. But I was super happy to see the way we
came back against Nottingham.
Stuck by, because Nottingham, if you remember, played Arsenal as well. It wasn't a very easy game for Arsenal either. They kind of struggled a lot to break through them. But what I really saw was that after we went down, the players
coming back,
not just come back. I think I don't get super excited by personally like, oh, we've come back, or we could have lost that game for all it mattered. But as a United fan right now, given the situation of our club, what I really want to see is just players doing the right things. Following the principles, following their rules, playing the right way with the right mentality. So I think that is something I was happy about. Now there are two ways to look at it. One was they were forced into a situation where they had to do that, which was dominate the ball, play high up, stay positioned, be disciplined. I think this was one of the first games I've seen in a while. Like I've seen this in phases, but against Nottingham Forest, I saw this for 70 to 80 minutes where we were just dominant. Just dominant because everybody did what they were supposed to the dot.
But that also comes with the fact that everybody needs to be informed. And I mean, Bruno's, I presume, is pretty much on the ball. But you think Rashford is alright? Or
I think Rashford was better this game. Because he played on the left. He didn't play down the middle. You know? So I think like Roy Keane said after the last game against Tottenham, he literally looked like a child playing down the middle. And he did. He looked like a child playing down the middle, and I agree with Roy because I think he was lost. Like we spoke about Havertz a little, so I think playing down the middle in a system like Ten Hag's or Arteta's, they're not similar in any way, but it's a challenge.
Do you need a talismanic frontman? Does United need a talismanic frontman, and if so, who's that guy?
So we've got Højlund. So I think Højlund is a good player. We have Martial. And Martial is also a very good player. I like Martial a lot, though he's very, very injury prone. And I think that is that's always been his issue and a point of frustration for all of us United fans. Because I genuinely believe if we had a consistent fit Anthony Martial, the situation would have been very, very different in terms of our goal scoring numbers and ability, because he does a lot of things in the final third that many players can't do, especially in terms of his hold up play, his link up play, his game intelligence, and he's great, you know. So I think we have certain options in that sense, but it's not about that. It's in a Ten Hag system, it's not about a talismanic striker. It's about everybody having to do their jobs. And what I mean by that is, in a system, let's look at it this way, you know. So I think when Arsenal, we were talking about Arteta a little while back, you know, when Arteta came in, and I know this for a fact, but it was nice to hear him say it, that one of the hardest jobs as a football coach is to convince your players that you have to play a certain way. And these are top players. We're talking about elite footballers who have been playing for years and they have achieved a certain level.
Right.
So they have egos, they have a certain level of self-respect, they have a certain level of self-confidence, and
you're comfortable.
And they're comfortable with themselves in a way, you know. Sometimes they don't feel that they need to be taught how to play football. And that's not what's happening. You're not teaching a player how to play football, you're teaching them how to think football, you know, collectively. So, and the reason it is very hard to convince players that they have to do certain things is, I'll give you one example, is that let's say you've crossed your first phase of play and now you're in the midfield area. At one point, you would require multiple people to be making a run for a system to work. So, but it's not necessary or pre-decided which of these players will eventually receive the ball.
Right.
But they all have to make the run. Each of these runs have a purpose. But as a player, if I ever put myself in that situation and I think to myself, you know, this coach is asking me to run, but I'm never getting the ball, so why should I run?
Correct.
I'll just stay here and ask for the ball because I want to be involved, right? But it is understanding that takes a little time for players to build that, you know what, this run
does free up space.
Exactly. One run creates width, one takes a defender out, one creates a little space.
Okay.
There are different people doing different things at every moment of time, and you have to do it if you want your team to play well. And then it's not about you anymore.
Got it.
It's about the team. And I think that is a big, you know, like I remember Louis van Gaal once said, you know, it's like, not even said, like it was this is a stat, like Thomas Muller once got 4 touches in the entire game.
Wow.
He scored 3 goals.
Oof.
I mean, it's a fact. now Thomas Muller is a different topic, but that's just what your job is. You have to be there, you have to do the right things and wait for the opportunities.
Correct.
And that is the hardest thing for a coach to actually...
Messi sideways look movement, yeah.
You have to be able to do it, and it's the hardest to kind of convince players that they have to do certain things, and kind of play in a certain way, and that makes it very, very difficult for coaches to...
Right. Ego management, primarily.
It's ego management, and also,
But is that also the reason why when it comes to an attacking minded coach, a lot of players kind of give in, at least there'll be, galores of goals. So
I think
this is what has happened to Spurs, I would presume. Despite Harry Kane leaving, the team seems to be kind of, suddenly built around a guy who's never worn the Spurs shirt.
I think let's talk about the first part first, which is attacking minded coaches and players giving in. I think it's more to do with the ability of the players.
Also, yes.
Okay, there are two sides to it. Like it's like Ten Hag said when he first came in, that he was asked a question. He was asked, so what is an ideal Ten Hag side like? And he said, I think he knows the situation he's in. So he went out and said, you know what? If you want to look at an ideal Ten Hag side, you've seen my Ajax team. But it's always the players that dictate how you play.
Right.
It's not that you go leave the players and just give them some basic. You create a system with them. Right. Or you have a system, but you adapt it to their strengths.
Okay.
Right. So maybe you're still playing the Ten Hag way, but you're not overutilizing your high line principles. Or you're not overutilizing your high pressing principles. Maybe you're telling the player, okay, fine, my system can be played in a mid block as well. We'll still play my way, but don't overcommit yourself forward, because I'm not confident enough in the abilities of my central midfielders to win that ball back, or they're not fast enough, or they're not strong enough, or they're not quick enough, or my wing.
But another mindset of another coach, and which is why I'm bringing in Spurs here, is that the coach's philosophy seems to be, it doesn't matter bomb forward. Right? I mean, you have Destiny Udogie making these runs. You have Madison, who's never worn a Tottenham shirt.
No, I think fair enough. But in Tottenham, I would go as far as to say that they are a very good team.
Okay.
Very, very good team. Like, let's look at Bissouma. Man, that control he brings in midfield, his game intelligence, the technique, his press resistance.
Okay.
Look at Sarr. I mean, these two are gems of footballers. So, in fact, it will be a criminal to take these players and play a defensive style of football, because you have weapons at your disposal which you are not utilizing.
Right.
Which is what was perhaps happening before, when I think we touched upon Tottenham a little.
Yes.
They got a little too desperate to win and started giving into that defensive philosophies of Jose Mourinho.
Yeah, defensive philosophy and give the ball to Kane. So
it backfired, because they actually, on one end, they're trying to build a team there, and I think Tottenham's recruitment is not that bad. Okay. I think their history is a little shallow.
Yeah, so Romero is like phenomenal.
Yeah, so I think it's so. But United, on the other hand, don't have technical footballers. So now, a player like Bruno will not give in to Ten Hag.
Okay.
Not because... Okay, and that's my opinion.
Sure.
Is that he will perhaps not give in to Ten Hag because he doesn't have the technical abilities to do what Ten Hag would ideally want him to do.
Right.
And neither would Ten Hag want to put Bruno in a situation between lines in half spaces where he knows Bruno will lose the ball. He cannot play the Ajax way, because Ajax played in half spaces. They played third man runs, they played fifth man runs, they played in 5s and 7s, and it's too complicated. Right now United are even struggling to understand the concept of a third man run. Now what is a third man run? If you are wondering, a third man run is simply nothing but you have A, B and C player. A passes it to C via B. It's not A to B to C, it's actually A to C.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying? Like, I'm passing it to C, but this is the way I'm going to go.
Got it.
Or that is, there are multiple ways to reach point A to C. There isn't just one point. You don't only have to go A to C. Right?
Sure.
So that is a third man. That's the third man philosophy. Is that there's a third man making a run when A to B are playing, but the goal of that ball when it leaves A's foot is to actually reach C, not B. And it's not. And that thought. So you're thinking a step ahead. And similarly, Pep will implement fifth man systems and seventh man. So there's like a seventh man making a run somewhere while you understand. So there are complications to the game, and let's not get too deep into
it's fascinating.
Football tactical classrooms and things, because that's a subject in itself, right?
So that's fascinating.
And players have to be able to think like that, and it takes a lot of time to kind of build that up and to train that, and you have to make mistakes. That's why Pep in his first year lost games 4-0 to Everton. I still remember, and everyone said he will not make it. Did he change? No, he lost another game 4-0. Do you not remember the first year Alex Ferguson, the famous Alex Ferguson, said Pep will not cut it in the Premier League? What happened? He's now won 4 and 5 years.
Everything.
He will not cut it because he made them. He said, no, I'm not changing. You concede another 5 because that's how you're going to learn. And that's one way to do it. But Pep could do that because he knows he has the backing of the club. He knows that if he says that I need a midfielder, he will get it. Or if I need a particular defender, or this guy is not working for me, I need him replaced. Because he has the backing. The guys on top know that we have to let him be in charge of the situation.
Got it. Yeah, of course.
Ten Hag situation different, Postecoglou situation different, because Postecoglou has fallen into a very technically good team.
Okay.
He's actually, I think he's he'll be very happy with his squad. Of course, he might want a few changes, but he definitely has the players to be able to play a very, very technical style.
Son looks a little, whatever. I mean, not yet up to his level.
Because, Son is for me like I put him. To me, he and Salah are very similar, in that sense, because they are very. I don't think they're very like Rashford is like that in a way. I think Son is because they're not very. Again, it's that decision. They can't deal with complex decision-making systems.
Correct.
For them, things have to be very simple. They can't.
Yeah, make the run.
So they struggle a little. So again, it's a matter of either you have to see either they adapt or they just don't.
They don't.
Now, but Postecoglou seems like he's in a situation where he has the complete backing of the manager.
Yes.
Right? He has the backing of the board who have allowed him to go and play the way he wants, implement his philosophy on the team. He knows he will be back with whatever. But United, unfortunately, it's a different situation because Ten Hag has come into a very, very commercial club. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. You have to be commercial at some point when you're such a big club, and it becomes a little difficult to balance everything out. In that particular way, it becomes a little harder when the expectations are so high, because you can't, like Man City had a situation because Man City were Man City. They could lose 1 year like that.
Right.
And say, okay, we'll be better the next year. But United don't have the freedom to do that. People will go crazy if we lose 3 games in a row, 4-0, 3-0. The manager, there'll be people calling for the manager's head, and everybody knows that, and
manager will go,
things will go.
Manager has gone in the past.
And so Ten Hag understands the situation he's in, but he's playing it very well. But I feel everybody is kind of getting aware, and there are things happening around which is helping United's situation. Like Postecoglou coming in. I'm sure the United hierarchy are watching this and hearing Postecoglou say, I will play my way, and then seeing the team beat United 2-0 playing their way. Now this will go into a close. Or there are things happening around. Like United losing the game to Tottenham was a typical example. It was a blessing. United. That's why I keep saying that 7-0 loss against Liverpool was a blessing in disguise. It's nothing to feel bad about. This is a part of a learning process, and this just exposes your weaknesses. Correct. And it just says, and Ten Hag has no fear. You watch his press conferences, he loses, he'll come out and say the players were indisciplined. They are not following rules, they are not following their principles, and even the players now know that. Right. So Ten Hag is actually playing this extremely smartly. He's letting the players do what he wants.
Of course,
he's implemented a certain thing.
Yeah, he did what he did with Ronaldo. It's like legendary.
No, and he's implemented a system, so you do see it. So what is happening there is the players know what he's expecting of them, but there are certain players on the field that are deciding to do things differently on their own terms.
Yeah.
Right? Because in fact Ten Hag said this in a press conference. Not that players do what they want, but he came out and said, I want to, we train, we do things, but players on the pitch have way more influence when the game is going on. Then what does that mean when he says something like that? He's basically saying, look, there are, and I think this was asked about when he said this when he was asked about Bruno's captaincy, which he never gave a straight answer to. Every time he's asked about Bruno's captaincy, he says, we have multiple leaders in our team, but Bruno is a good social connector.
Okay.
He's a good social connector, but we have multiple leaders in our team. And after Nottingham game, he said, I was very happy to see the way the team responded after that game. I was very happy to see that we have many leaders in the team.
Again.
What does this mean? Many leaders. He's talking about Martinez, he's talking about Onana, he's talking about Anthony. People who controlled the game for us, are most important footballers. Right. So he never gives a straight answer when he's asked about Bruno. Right? He gives it seems like it's something that's been written down by the marketing team. So it's an interesting one.
You mentioned the 3-man pass and the 5-man pass, the 7-man pass. I want to know what is in your opinion, a 10-man winning squad which Jurgen Klopp pulled off, which is arguably the match of to be gone by.
No, so I don't think
Newcastle is a stunning team.
Yeah, no, they are a stunning team. So are Liverpool.
But Salah looked out of place for the first couple of weeks. He still does in my opinion.
Yeah, but they are both stunning teams in their own kind of league.
Right.
And then you have Man City. Now what I'm basically trying to say, they are very similar. Now Newcastle have a little more structure going forward, which is very evident, because when they have the ball, you can see that they are able to create opportunities much easier.
Got it.
Compared to Liverpool.
My exact point is that, right, with Liverpool's fragile defense, and then Konate not playing, you expected, a 10-man Liverpool will not be able to, sustain against.
No, so it's not. Again, I think similar to Brighton, it's more of a question of an ineffective attack rather than a fragile defense. Because that, again, if you're not efficient forward, you will get put under pressure at the back. Teams will kind of go into a game, they will get. It's the same thing all over again. And the second thing is, it's like Eddie Howe said in his press conference that Liverpool going down to 10, Newcastle going down, Liverpool going down to 10 men was actually bad for them.
Okay.
Now what that basically means is, it's way harder to play when there are 10 men behind. It's simple. It's like, I don't know if you remember 3 or 4 years back when Marcelo Bielsa was at Leeds and they played Man City. And they were down to 10 men in the first half. They played 60 minutes of the game with 10 men down against City and they won 1-0.
Okay, I forget, yes.
No, so it's actually, when you're down to 10 men, Liverpool will not play, they'll just defend.
Wait for the counters, yes.
But to be fair to Liverpool, there were moments where they did try to play still. Alisson came up, became a extra defender, sweeper, keeper. He took the position of, and that allowed them few moments, but it not consistently. I think that 10 men downs did give Newcastle a lot more control, but control in football is sometimes an illusion.
Right.
It's now what is control, right? Like, are you in control or is the other team still in control? You just have the ball, right? Now these are like little nuances that you have to kind of be able to identify. So I think that's exactly what happened. So I think Newcastle, Liverpool going down to 10 men was actually good for them, because now they attacked less and that left them less exposed. And when you have quality of defenders like that, and when you're playing a defensive game, it's very hard for a team like Newcastle to break you down.
Got it.
When if it was maybe a Man City or someone, it would be different. Now Man City, Leeds, I know we spoke about, but Leeds was coached by Bielsa, who was a completely different ball game compared to Eddie Howe. So I think he's revolutionary. He's one of those absolutely pioneers of the game. I think and Pep's philosophy is massively influenced by Bielsa. It's a mix of many. He's one of, I still remember when but anyway, let's not get into, we'll probably talk about Bielsa another time. I think it is interesting to talk about Bielsa. Maybe we will tackle this at some point, maybe just to have an interesting football conversation. But so I think Liverpool got very. They were just both very average teams. That's it. Newcastle didn't look like a team that are going to compete for a title. Like a lot of people
that's the one
trying to put that
said,
expectation on them because of their.
But they are kind of happy.
No, they are certainly not happy. But I don't think Eddie Howe's the answer.
Okay.
I think Eddie Howe's a good guy to build them a good base. But eventually, they will have to get a coach that is a step above to really close that gap. You know, I wouldn't be surprised to see them looking at someone like De Zerbi in the future. You know, if things don't go according, and that will be a deadly combination. Now you have a coach like De Zerbi with the funds of Newcastle United. I mean, what is he doing at Brighton without funds? Right. Imagine what he can do.
Correct.
Look at what Ten Hag did at Ajax without funds. He reached a Champions League semi-final. And destroyed Real Madrid 4-1 and just the way Man City do. And no one talks about that. But these are things that happen. So it's not about money all the time. Sure. But I think they need to kind of go to that next level, because if anything this game showed was that Newcastle, just like Liverpool, find it very difficult to break teams down. And Liverpool have had this problem for years now. They are very good against the big teams. But the reason they've always stayed a little behind is because they struggle against the defensive team sometimes. Because they run out of ideas. They don't have a fixed structure. Correct. And it's interesting that we're talking about this, because I know you will probably be asking this going forward, or you would want to probably talk about Chelsea. So let's speak about Chelsea now, because I think it kind of ties into the same conversation in a way. Because I was watching Chelsea's game, and let's look at their midfielders. They have a midfield that's valued at 220 million. Caicedo and
Enzo.
And they didn't get the ball once. I am watching that game and I'm just waiting for them to receive the ball, and they are not getting the ball. So why are they not involved in the play? Chelsea's entire system that game, I don't even think Chelsea. It was just going around the team.
The wing backs, correct.
They go around. Either from the side they'll try to find Jackson who makes a false nine kind of a run.
Gusto's now
or they'll play a straight ball down the wing so that the
winger runs, yes.
So why do you have two midfielders worth 200? And this shows me that there's a major disconnect somewhere.
Right.
Because number one, you can't play around the team. Because a team's just going to keep moving. Okay, yes, they won 3-0, but it was Luton Town.
Correct.
They're not going to get away with that against a better team.
And everybody is hyping up Sterling. I think just it's a matter of
Not my point is more towards the fact that I still don't think Pochettino has control over what's going on there.
Okay.
And that is little disturbing to see.
On paper, I thought Enzo and Caicedo. That's
and it's not just forget Enzo. It could be anybody there. The basic principles of football dictate that if you want to create space, you have to play through space. If you are going to keep going around, they are always in disciplined and structured. You're not breaking that structure.
You're not giving the ball to the best player in your team.
No, forget that. You're not breaking that structure. If
just
you go left,
trying to
they'll
use
move
space.
Left. You go right, they'll move that side. But you're not kind of breaking that structure, and all you're doing is depending on a lucky moment or something magical to happen. Because if you have to create space or break a team's structure, which is what teams like City and Brighton do time and time again.
Correct.
You have to play through them. And by through them, I mean through Enzo, through Caicedo. What did Caicedo do at Brighton? Why was he so... It was that. It was because he was an avenue to go through, which would completely disorganize an opponent. Because you have to go through the middle for that to happen. And I thought that was very, very... I mean, it was fascinating to watch, because number one, it kind of showed me that maybe in a way Pochettino genuinely doesn't have that same kind of, because I know how Pochettino likes to play football, like from his Tottenham days or whatever, even in parts his PSG days, because while PSG also had certain issues and things were not working the way he would have probably liked, you could see certain structures in place, because in terms of coming
I don't know,
forward.
I just never felt Pochettino very impressive.
Yeah.
It's a personal thing. But
Yeah.
never impressive.
No, so
It's
Pochettino.
very. He's actually at the Eddie Howe level.
No,
You know?
so Pochettino is right up there with the best.
Oh, okay.
Now Pochettino is modern Bielsa.
Okay.
He's Bielsa's student. He's Bielsa's favorite student. Now, Bielsa talks about him like he's taught him, he's groomed him. Like it's like same Argentinian, right?
Yeah,
It's that, and so I mean, if you like Marcelo Bielsa and you think Pochettino is right up there with the best, and I don't know if you maybe ever have a doubt about Pochettino, I'll suggest that maybe try finding the Tottenham Real Madrid game,
Okay.
the year they reached the final,
Okay.
and watch that match. Real Madrid couldn't get a hold of the ball. It'll look very similar to City versus Madrid or Ajax versus Madrid,
Yeah.
because he's another system coach.
Hmm.
Likes to dominate the ball. He knows how to. He has a very clear plan in place. And
So,
instead of like not going too much into detail about what his system is, but he is an absolute brilliant coach, in my opinion. And I think there are facts.
So hopefully
and
he'll turn around
things
things at Chelsea. My hope is that.
I mean,
but
it's yeah, like I mean, I think most Chelsea fans would hope that they would kind of
so much money
do
at
better
stake.
this time, but I don't know if they can identify what the actual problem is. Now, if you don't look at these things, you'll always have an opinion, but you'll never have the right analysis of something going. Like you can say, oh, I wish Chelsea does better, but what does that mean?
I know.
That's vague, right?
Correct.
What exactly does that statement mean?
Yeah,
What
yeah,
has to be better? Like, do you mean like one day they'll just become better players, or suddenly someday something will click? No, what does that mean? I
Fair
hope
enough. I just hope
something
Poch has that answer. Yeah, I know what you mean.
So, where is that? Like, it's like, so I think it's important to identify. There's a saying in football. It's like it's one thing to know that a mistake has happened, but it's another thing to know what the mistake was. A lot of players know they've made a mistake, but very few players know what the mistake was. So I think these are little things that I pick up from little coaching books and things like that of coaches, quotes and stuff. And these are things that people use.
Absolutely.
In their everyday training session.
Because the game of this week, and I'm going to end it at that.
Yeah.
Is going to be which amongst Arsenal and United make the least amount of mistakes, right? I mean, will Havertz find his groove? Will Arteta start with him? Will he? I mean, it's pretty obvious that he's not going to start with Gabriel, because I think his defensive formation is something else, despite of the fact that he's conceding so many goals. Obviously, he has some experimental roadmap in his head that I'm gonna do whatever. Ten Hag, of course, as you being a United fan, even otherwise, you think United are the favourites to win the game, and hopefully Holland comes in and plays. Predicted scoreline? I know we're not that kind of a show. But
I think I'll go for a 2-1 to United. Just because I feel. Yeah, so that's my prediction. But I think if I were to go into what I think the game will be like, or what my expectations are from the game, I think first thing would be to notice they've both been conceding goals.
Right.
But I think the nature of the goals that both the teams have been conceding are very different.
Right.
Okay, so I think let's look at the first goal, for example, that Arsenal conceded against Fulham. I think it came back from Fulham winning the ball back in their own half.
That's right.
High up. Because of course that's an aspect of Marco Silva's system. But it also comes out of the fact that, like I think we spoke about a little last time, was Arteta's little obsession with always wanting to have the ball and wanting to build up. So I think sometimes what Arsenal have been doing at times is putting themselves into difficult situations just because they want to dominate the game. And I don't think that's the right way to look at football. I think domination should be a byproduct of how strong your system is. It shouldn't be approached. Game shouldn't be approached with the thought that I need to keep the ball or I need to have. That's a completely wrong way of looking at it. I think you should be able to play a long ball when needed, because you are confident enough to win the ball back high on the second or third ball once you do that, because you are strong enough that your system is that solid. And I don't think Arteta kind of has that much faith in his system in the same way
Pep has in his
Pep or a Ten Hag has in their systems.
Oh, okay.
Like, that's something I really appreciate about Ten Hag, and particularly Dutch coaches who are similar to him, or like, they are not about ball domination, they are about tactical domination. They will take the chance where they see it, whether it's a long ball or whether it's a short ball or whether it's a diagonal. It doesn't matter, because they have an answer to every situation.
I just hope that United has that finishing. I mean, we obviously can take the
correct.
chances, but
so I think that is one. I hope Martial will start that game, because I don't think Højlund will be able to.
Okay.
And I don't think he is. I've been hearing that he's not going to start playing till the end of September or till after the September international break. So I think both the teams are vulnerable, but for very different reasons. I think if we look at the Nottingham Forest game, both the goals United conceded were absolutely shambolic. The first one was, no way should that have. I think Van Bissaka missed the first header, and that completely isolated Rashford, who one could argue should not have been in that position. Because, and that is where their intelligence comes in, because once you put in a system, the system says that you can interchange positions as long as one person takes your place. So people are constantly interchanging, right? And in that moment, the players themselves should have kind of had the intelligence to understand that this is a potential counter-attack situation, so Rashford should not be the one in the middle standing there. So I think somewhere they made there was a little mix-up. But okay, even if Rashford was there, that was weak. That was so weak. The ball literally went through him like he wasn't there, and there was absolutely. And then you have social media going gaga about how Onana could have done better. I mean, just imagine how people are. Like, it's just. I mean, these things baffle me. It's just like, you're blaming Onana for that. Like, I mean, come on. Like, it's at least analyze correctly. At least you should have a clinical analysis of. Then it makes sense to critique, and then it makes sense to point.
But that's a different.
But it's But I just thought. But it was for me a little upsetting as a United fan and someone who really appreciates what Onana brings to the table. But so maybe in case someone is hearing this somewhere, then I want them to know that please, just analyze the games a little better. But and even the second goal was, the guy who scored it just stood there. He didn't even have to move to win the header. It's like everyone in front of him just moved away from the ball to let it go to him, so he could just put it into the. So none of these goals came out of overplaying, or it didn't come out of being poor in transition, or it didn't come out of being poor in a low block situation where someone just played through us.
It's some position discriminatory.
They were absolute free goals, So I think in that sense, United are going to be tough to beat, because they are not going to give Arsenal, and they are not going to obsess over having the ball. They are not going to do that. Hopefully, if Arteta is not that obsessive either, he's going to play the game in a more practical sense rather than a more idealistic way, which I think will help them. But
we'll know.
But I think it will be a very, very interesting game to watch, but I definitely hope United win it. But again, anything can happen.
Correct.
And Arsenal have, of course, just are coming out of a bad result.
So
United are coming out of a couple of bad results. Even though they won the last game, deep down inside they'll all know that they can do much better, because I think so. They both are going to be very, very motivated to kind of win this game. I think one thing that we know from the last year is definitely that when Ten Hag finds a way, he finds a way to beat teams, whether it's Barcelona or whether it's. But yes, I think it will be interesting, and
hopefully game of the week.
Let's hope we have some good games, and
hopefully
We'll connect again.
You'll be smiling.
Hopefully, I'll be smiling the next time that we talk, and we are talking about the United Arsenal game.
Yes.
Okay.
Chalo, see you.
Yes, see you.
Bye. See you, man.